Hello and welcome. I'm Ashur Annam. Welcome to our Soul Transition Code preview. I've been having fun playing with the Soul Transition codes and looking at what shows up and what type of information shows up for each of us. Let me first explain a little bit about how the codes are retrieved. I first connect with the Large Magellanic Cloud, which I have a picture here. Now you can take a look at this. And those of you who have gone to some of my live events, you have, I think you're more familiar with it. We have done a lot of exploration of it. It is known as the pineal gland of the Milky Way galaxy. And then, through the cloud consciousness, which sounds interesting because we have all those things in today's world in clouds. Everybody wants to do things or put things or store things in the clouds. So, we have the Magellanic Cloud, and through the consciousness of the cloud or the collective consciousness of the cloud, I access a group of stellar network of different stars, planets, not necessarily physical level, but a much higher level of consciousness. And then through that network, we look at connecting with your higher level of consciousness. And then from that level, information comes down. Once I communicate with or about you, picture, information that you're sending, things that you needed to submit for the soul transition code. So once I make the connection, then a lot of times I see that in that network, different information, different types of symbols, geometry, shapes, colors, and sound harmonics coming in, and they're going into different symbols. And then as the symbols show up, as the positions show up, then I put them on paper one by one. So that's the general way of doing that. Once I am done with everything, like each person's soul transition code takes some time. Like when some of you who are familiar with what I've done in the live event, they were much faster, but now it seems like different segments of codes take quite a bit of time to come down. And then after I'm done, a lot of sound harmonics come in and other sensations come in, information that we can notice in different ways. So that's very different because the very first time soul transition codes showed up for me was a few years ago. And then I've created a bunch, and we have explored some. And now this new phase or the second phase is showing up again for the first time in after a few years. So what I will do is I'll show some code snippets. But what I wanted to mention today is mainly that these codes are for your overall journey. And so what does your soul desire? What is your soul vision or the vision of your higher consciousness for the personality? It has less to do with what color car you want to get, or some of the things that you want to manifest right now, but it's looking at the overall picture, because from that level of consciousness, a red car versus a blue car versus a house in this neighborhood or in that neighborhood, there is very little to that. From that level of consciousness, it's about your journey. Where are you? What have you learned? Where do you want to go next? What is your path? And a lot of high level information. So when you get the diagrams, and I'll explain some ways to play with them too. You touch different points in the diagram, and you notice the sound harmonics, you notice the smell, you notice the taste, you notice the visuals. And, even if you think that you're not that sensitive, you can pick up sounds or information like that, from an image. Now, understand that the soul transition codes are not flat. They're on a graphic or on a piece of paper when I'm drawing it, but then there is depth on both sides. And when you are playing with the field of the information or the energy, you notice different sensations. I'm saying that because I've been testing a lot of the video sessions where different participants signed up for the soul transition codes with the video, and I've been asking them that, okay, when you touch this, what happens? What do you hear? What do you smell? What colors show up? What messages pop up? And everybody has been able to tell me, some information. So your unconscious mind, that's the, if you rise above the part of you or the beta brain of you that is doing the day-to-day thinking, and like when we are having conversations or when we are doing things that are very three-dimensional for this reality, beyond that, which is at least 95% of the brain, that part of the brain understands the codes because it's also coming in from your higher level of consciousness. It's not coming from me. I'm just drawing them for you. So that part of your brain understands the information, and then it can receive the guidance or instructions or connections and notice what's happening. And that part of your brain can translate a circle or a dot or a line or some kind of a design on the page and translate that for you in a form that makes sense to you. Okay, so for that reason, when you touch the symbols or play with that, even the example that you have seen on the soul transition code page, just play with that and notice some of that information. Now, that was the first version of the code, so you may not notice some of the sound and other things there, but the new ones are coming in with a lot of information. What I can do is, let's see, let me share my screen, and I will just show you some snippets, and I will ask you to just play with the energy. Okay. So let's take a look. And these are some snippets that I just copied and pasted here. When things come down like this on the top left, they're purely sound harmonics. There isn't really any translation of that data. They are just frequencies and different types of sounds, and these are for sound tuning of you, your path, your journey, where you are, where you want to go. So if you notice things like this in your codes, whether you have your codes or you're going to get them at some point, when you notice this is a purely sound harmonics, play with them. How do you play with them? You can take your index finger and simply touch the different circles. Let me zoom in. Touch the different dots, touch the different lines. Run your finger through some of these lines and full lines and also the individual components, and notice what happens. Okay, let's do a quick experiment with that. Let's just think about this particular line, the very last line I'm highlighting, and I think you can see it on my screen when I'm highlighting something. Just think about this line and connecting with these lines and dots, and either with your finger um, on the screen or in your mind or in the hologram, just touch some of these dots and ask yourself, if I could hear the sound, what would I hear? Just quickly, let's do that. And don't second guess, if your brain translates that to a song that you heard when you were little, just go with that. Just simply ask that question, allow your brain to respond. Then touch some of the lines here where I've highlighted and ask the same question. If I could hear the sound, if you don't hear it, if you already hear it, that's fine. But if I could hear the sound, what would I hear? What does it sound like? And then play with your, let's say, right index versus left index and notice the difference. You can do any fingers, but I'm just saying index because it's easier to, I think, touch them with your index fingers. And then touch two at the same time with your index, or the two index fingers on two hands, and ask, what do I hear? What do they sound like? Now, these are not necessarily codes that are personal to you. When you get your soul transition code, it'll be simply your version. So maybe for that reason, you'll be able to tune in more. But even without that, since these are a lot of information and frequencies, you may already be able to hear some of that. Okay, so that was fun. Hopefully you had some fun and you had you heard some things. Even if it's your next door neighbor screaming, that still counts because it's sound, right? Okay, so now next is, there are structures like this that sort of look like E, or in different orientations or rotations of E. Sometimes they come down, and they've come down for a lot of the participants, or those who have placed their orders. These are like major networks, and they're directing a lot of information in many different ways. Some of them could be they are sending information to different timelines, different parts of your soul journey, or different experiences. So some look quite complicated, or some could be simple like this, but they are data networks or gateways, and through these different information is passed from one reality or one dimension or one plane to another plane. A lot of times I would give you the example of, let's say you are on an airplane and you're looking at a city that's right below the airplane. And all you're seeing is like tiny structures that look like square or a line that's actually a road. But from that level, you don't quite understand it. You just understand there are some structures there. And these are buildings and roads, but you don't know the details. But when you come down to a street level, then that tiny little square could be a 30-story building, and the first 3 floors are shopping malls, and then you have offices, and then you have a hotel. So you're not going to understand all of that just from the vertical view. So a lot of the soul transition code gives you the vertical view of an overall picture. So these are connections to different timelines, to different levels of existence, to different realities sometimes, to past, present, future, a lot of different experiences. So that's why as you play more with the energy and information, you download more. These, for example, a lot of these symbols They're also like switches or keys on your phone or computer. When you press them, something happens, right? So in a similar way, you can select some of these options, either an individual symbol or a group or a set like this, and you can press it and allow data to flow through you. Now I'm using some computer language, math, scientific language, but it's basically since there's a lot of uh, data flow that's happening and guidance and lessons and instructions that are coming in, then from the physical, from the three-dimensional reality, you don't necessarily need to understand all the things, because this doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get your red car in 3 days. Nothing in these codes say, my dear child, everything is going to be okay. It's not a message like that. These are all a lot of networks and connections that are coming in from your higher consciousness and helping you to guide you or nudge you on your path, sending you information that you need in the form of sound harmonics, in the form of different frequencies, different colors, different geometry, different shapes, and sometimes lessons and guidance. So you can play with them and touch them, and those are some of the ways you can play with the codes. On most of these, you see circles and like dots. The dots are like frequencies. They are almost like you're playing the piano, right? So when you notice a lot of these dots, you can touch them and play those frequencies for sound toning. So there, again, it's not necessarily only for today. The information is going out from this moment to the to a certain timeline. It could be 500-year radius around you, or let's say 2,000-year radius around you. It could be for a certain period of time, and the frequencies are going out from these symbols to give yourself, give your existence, give your reality a fine tuning for that timeline. So a lot of these dots are like frequencies, and a lot of these circles, like here or here, you can play them like singing bowls. That's how it shows up. Like how do you play with them physically? So you can touch them, and your finger becomes that mallet, and you can just go through the circle and play the tune, and your brain picks up the energy and the sound. And as you play more and more, you can begin to notice that different sound harmonics is flowing through you, and you can begin to hear some of that information. Okay. Then there are symbols like this at the lower left-hand corner. They come in different ways. Here's one. Here's another one. Some are more structured, some are less structured. Some have more patterns in them. But these are like some higher vibrational information coming down to the physical plane in a vertical way. So when you play with that, you just go from one side to the other side, trace with your finger and play them. Basically, your entire soul transition code, you can use your fingers to play them, to absorb energy information from them, or to touch different parts of the symbol. Like, let's say you select this, and you just touch this part with your finger or with your palm. Notice what happens. Or you send a beam of light from your third eye into that section, and notice what happens. Or you send, let's say, connections from your chakras into your soul transition code, and allow your chakras to interact with the energy, with the sound, with the light frequencies, with everything else that's there and notice what happens. The empty space, let's say, for example, if I zoom into this, the empty space here, it's not really empty because there's still information embedded. There are, once I'm done with the codes, a lot of sound harmonics and other type of data come in and go into the page, into the diagram, into the image, and above and beyond that image. So they create more of a three-dimensional reality that we can see or notice here. Some of you can already see it maybe, or when you tune in, you can see it. And they have a lot more multidimensional connections. And then you can play with them, you can activate them, and you can simply notice your sensations and enhance your skills. Now, you can also use them for manifestations. Like sometimes some of the images have almost like manifestation keys. So for example, you can assign this as your manifestation button. Now that's something you can choose in your mind. So the brain is happy, your analytical part is happy that, okay, this is my manifestation button. Now, let's say you would like to manifest something. So even though a lot of this is very high vibrational information, and they have nothing to do with a car or a house, but let's say you're looking for something, you're looking to manifest something. So you can go into the soul transition code, and that also connects you with the stellar network and your higher level of consciousness from where a lot of the codes and information came down. So you can touch and press this button, if this is a button or a key, and activate the option for you to manifest something, and you can communicate with that level of consciousness. Okay, I really like a car or a house or whatever that is, because once I have it, then I can go to different places. Once I have it, then I can take care of other things. Once this is out of the way, I can free up my system to pay more attention to the earth and to help the plants and animals and help other people, or write my book, but make sure you follow through when you do approach that manifestation energy, or when you have that. So you can play that a bit, and then once you are done, once you convey your message that this is what I'm looking for, this is the end result. Don't think about all the things that need to happen. Think about the snapshot of the manifestation. Like once everything is done, this is what it looks like or sounds like, or this is the end result. So you're thinking about the end result, and then you can look at the rest of your codes. Let's say this is the rest of your code. These are just all snippets, but let's assume that this is your soul transition code. Then you can ask yourself that, okay, so for that manifestation, what's next for me? Where do I go? What lessons do I need to learn? How can I approach it? And notice which part of the codes attract you more. Play those circles, touch those dots, play those tunes, play those singing bowls, and touch those keys or symbols and play those symbols. So as you're doing that, you're also training your brain that to receive and embody a lot of these energy and information from different planes of existence and from different realities, so that you can move forward and align with what you desire. When you are playing with this, you can also run some of the tools for you, like restore inner abundance, restore inner magic, or have a dream state sequence below you under your chair where you're sitting. Allow that to flow through you. Create a vortex of manifestation. There's so many things we have done, or like bring in some stars energies and allow the vortex energy of a star to spiral through you, while you're focusing on your codes. So, you can play them in many different ways. A lot of things sometimes look like math. I don't think I have any snippet here, but there are interesting, symbolisms came in. It's almost like, this is directing you to this, and then it's creating that result. Sometimes things show up that way. When you notice things that look like, let's say, equals with, circles, a lot of times those are bridges. Like, for example, here is one. And what that's doing is you have a segment here, and then you have something else here, and then you have something else here. And these bridges, like this one or this one, they are connecting, or like this one, they're connecting you to different options, different possibilities, different solutions, maybe different timelines. So a lot of these are bridges. And again, we're only looking at the partial view. If you could see the three-dimensional image, they look quite different, because then you have depth, this, suddenly this looks more like a different, shape when you're looking at the height and width and everything. So, don't get caught up in what something looks like. Understand there's a lot of depth in different directions, and there's a lot of connections that are coming in from, different levels of existence, okay? Some of your codes have things like that. They're almost like different quadrants in math. You have this option, you have this option, you have this option, you have this option. What's beneficial for you? How do you move through different options and go into creating a particular result that you're looking for? So sometimes they work like that. So you can just play with those also. Like here is another example where you notice the coordinates, the almost like a plus sign, and then you have these four options. In math, in graph, a lot of times you have those type of options where you have different X and Y coordinates. Again, that's just math, but sometimes some of these look like math or circuits or connections, because that's kind of what they are. They're also bringing in a lot of logic for you, for that. Okay, you can do this and approach it this way or that way. So depending on your alignment, things can show up in different ways. Okay. So I think those are some of the things I wanted to mention, and that, I'm going to show some snippets for you to see. So they're basically for you to play with, for you to explore. These are information and codes. They are coming in directly from your higher level of consciousness, and that consciousness knows, your path, better than the rest of humanity. So when you're connecting in or tuning into that level of awareness, you can notice what flows through you. The main thing is for you to start playing with the codes and touch different points, touch different dots, play with the circles, and play with the sound harmonics. Generate them with your finger, because then you're using your left and right brain and your physical body to actually create the sound harmonics. Even if you don't hear it right away, you're generating the information, and your brain or your body is receiving them. As I was saying, that when I've experimented with some, and I asked them to play some of the notes or some of the circles or the singing bowls, then they would tell me that what was happening in different parts of the body. And I found that to be very interesting to notice how quickly everyone was picking up some of the information or sensations because they're coming in from a higher level of consciousness. So the idea is really to continue to explore these symbols and diagrams and connections and the networks and all the guidance and everything else that's there. And then you can play with the energy, and the more you play with them, the more you can fine tune your senses. And the main thing is you begin to tap into a broader network of your consciousness, not just this particular timeline and what's happening here, but you are looking at, let's say, 5,000 years of your soul journey, or 17,000 years of your soul journey, depending on what type of information you have there on your soul transition codes. And as you're playing with the information, that entire network or your timeline is receiving the benefits, because it's all coming from your high consciousness. So that's pretty much what I wanted to mention today, and give you some tips about using them. But the bottom line is really to look at playing with them, and just playing with them on a regular basis, at least initially on a daily basis. Keep them in front of you, on your phone, on your computer. You get a digital version, so you can print out multiple copies, keep one at your desk. If you want to put one up on the wall, then you can do that. Your codes are personal to you. If somebody in the family, like kids, grandkids, or if somebody sees them at work, they're not going to integrate your information, because they're also locked. They can notice the energy, but it's not their code, so they're not going to be interacting with your codes. Yeah, that's so. If you want to put something on the wall, or leave something on the desk, that's fine. When people are curious, then sometimes that works on your favor too, because that curiosity energy is directed at you, and especially when kids see it, you can tune in more with some of the curiosity energies of the kids, especially if you have grandkids, or no other children. You can watch what they do with them, and how they play with them. So that's another fun way to watch little kids play with them, because they are more in tune or in alignment with a lot of that energy, and they can see a lot of that information. Okay. All right, so I'm going to open up the line. If you have any question, then you can use the control panel to raise your hand, or if you're using the chat window, then you can use the chat window to ask any question. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat window. From John, when you say to touch different parts, do you mean to touch virtually, or in our imagination, or touch with our hands after printing the code? So you can touch in many different ways. So if I'm looking at this, I can physically touch it, notice your sensations. I can digitally touch it. If it's on my computer, then I can touch it on my computer. I can touch it in my mind. If it's on the wall, I can tune in and focus on something, a particular symbol, and I can also energetically touch it. So you can do it in different ways. I think you will notice the sensation is different based on how you're working with it. And since the medium is also different, one is a printed paper, one is digital, one is more holographic. So as you move your hands and fingers through the field of the soul transition codes and the imprint and the matrix imprint of it, then you will notice that you're going through different sensations, whether you physically touch it or energetically touch it, and you can notice what works best for you. So play a symbol and then notice what you hear, and what is the difference between energetically touching it or playing it in your mind, touching it in your mind, imagining that you're connected to it, or physically touching the paper and noticing what shows up. Okay. I'm not sure about the last question. Oh, okay. How about pets? That's a different question. So some of this, like for some of the vertical, design, yeah, it doesn't have to have reflective property. Sometimes things show up that are quite symmetrical and they are very reflective. Certain diagrams are like that, and some parts of it are different. It's just different types of energy and flow and different interactions happening. So notice that, and what you can do is you can take two fingers and run through them simultaneously, and notice your sensations, and notice what happens. What about pets? Are you asking if the pets have soul transition codes? Um, I don't know if they need them. I think they're more aligned with yeah, they're more aligned than us. I think most plants and animals are more aligned than humans. Or if they will react, test them out. Now, I've noticed or I've heard about cats and dogs. When let's say somebody is using headphone, their cats or dogs will come and sit with them when I do the journey, and when I'm done, then they would leave, even though they're not hearing anything, because somebody's using headphones. And I've heard that so many times. But the pets would come exactly when I begin the journey and leave when I end. So they can receive the information and notice the energy, so they may notice this too. So you can experiment with them and see what happens. All right, anybody else? Otherwise we can conclude our exploration for today. I don't see any hand raised on the control panel, and I don't see any other questions too. All right, great. So thanks for joining. If you have additional questions, then you can email support@lifeharmonize.com. And as I mentioned, like I think I first connected with them in 2015 and then 2016. Those 2 days or a couple of days, a lot of different codes came in, and then there hasn't been anything. So at this moment, that connection is, it seems to be open again. So I will have this available when this connection is there. If it seems like it's time to close that, then I'm not going to offer that. And when it comes back, so I don't really know. So for that reason, those of you who asked, like how long, I think it's going to stay open for another month or so. Beyond that, I cannot tell. It may not. I just don't know. And so the guidance I had was like, as more of us begin to play with the soul transition codes, then we can create a significant impact on the planetary, alignment and our collective human consciousness and our collective journey. Because we notice that so many stuff happening all around the planet and so many different groups doing different things. It's not necessarily ideal for the planet. So when more of us come together and play with the codes and bring in a lot of these high vibrational energies, then we can shift reality in a way that's beneficial for us, and more people can align more with their higher consciousness. So for the time when this is open, and I'm not ridiculously charged for making those wireless connections. I'll have the option available, and then we'll see when it shows up again. Okay. Now, will the codes change over time? Um, yeah, I'm pretty sure, like, as you play with the energies, you know, at different energies, different information will come in. So, think about a data segment, like, we're taking this information that's coming in now, where will you be in, let's say, 3 years? Which part of your soul journey will be moving through? What will come in for that time period? I don't know. But, for me, energy is always moving, and things are always changing. So it's difficult to reproduce something exactly the same way, and that's why even when I do teach classes, or do live events, especially even if I'm talking about the exact same thing, which I'm not, but even if I talk about the exact same thing, it's still going to be different, because I cannot reproduce the same thing twice, because the information is different. And you may ask, like, how can it be different? But think about, in this universe where we are right now, exactly at this moment, there is a space-time coordinate. And when we move from that coordinate to, let's say, after 3 days, the coordinate changes, right? The time coordinate is different. The space coordinate is different. So the energy is different. Information is different. What's flowing through that space is different. So then the information will always keep changing. But our objective is for us to um, really tune in and learn as much as we learn, integrate as many lessons as we can, and then, grow with it and move forward and play with the codes, so we can, really start to tune in more with some of these higher level of consciousness, and higher levels of awareness of different stellar networks. All right. Okay, great. So thanks for joining. I will post the recording on the monthly abundance page. If you don't know where that is, then just look at the email for this month's monthly abundance call, and it's going to be posted on that page. And then you can just go there and watch the video. Okay, so great. I'm really excited about playing with these codes, and these are mostly for individuals. Then I'm testing some for, let's say, company codes and focus-oriented codes, and I'm looking at how things show up for that. How things show up for a company, how things show up for a particular idea. And it's just fun for me to explore new things in new ways, and it all always keeps me energized. So thank you for joining, and those of you who are playing with the codes, play and share your experience on one of our private Facebook groups, or email support@lifeharmonize.com, because anytime you send your experience, your feedback, and what's working for you, how things are showing up for you, what you're manifesting, it's always beneficial for me to read that. I love reading those, and I love learning about how you are using something. And then a lot of times I get ideas about things that I haven't thought about. But so many of you are figuring things out, or doing things in different ways that what I talked about. So it's always fun to see that. So thank you very much. Have a magical rest of your day and rest of the month.